If the first question about closing your company is how much does it cost, you are making a massive mistake, because focusing on the price to liquidate could alone lead you straight into severe personal liability. There can be hidden fees, and this leads to serious financial damage for you personally. Every single week, UK directors ask insolvency people what's the cheapest price for liquidation, without realising the real question should be, how do I protect myself? What's this going to cost me in total? Focusing on liquidation costs alone often blinds directors into serious financial risks. Risks that could cost you your home, could cost you your savings, and could cost you years of financial stress. Now in this video, you are going to learn exactly why focusing purely on liquidation costs is a very dangerous game, and what you should prioritise instead. And I'm going to explain it clearly. I'm going to go through all the hidden risks behind cheap liquidation quotes, and I'm going to talk about some real life disasters that directors have faced when they chose a liquidator based purely on price. And I'm also going to show you precisely how to approach liquidation safely to protect yourself legally and financially. Now, it's Chris Worden. I'm from Director First. Every week I speak with UK directors who thought choosing the cheapest liquidation option would often solve the problems. Now, without fail, directors who go for the cheapest quote end up facing sometimes some quite devastating consequences. I have seen firsthand the pain, stress and financial ruin that happens when you don't get liquidation right. And I've also helped literally thousands of directors avoid those mistakes. Now, we can't sweep problems under the carpet. Where we're different is we believe in being honest and transparent about absolutely everything from the start, and we don't want anything from you in return. Now, our aim is to help you navigate liquidation and other insolvency processes safely, legally, and if there are going to be some personal consequences, we want you to know about them up front, and we allow you to do that by helping you ask the right questions and focus on the right things. Now, if you are facing insolvency right now, I want you to stick with me, because this video, it might save you an absolute fortune. In the video, what I'm going to cover, I'm going to talk about the 3 top mistakes directors make when they focus only on liquidation costs. I'm going to talk about the hidden dangers of cheap liquidation services, and I'm going to go through exactly what you should prioritise instead to safely protect your personal assets. And obviously, with all our videos, there is a practical 30-day action plan to help you move forward safely. Okay? Right, quick water. The first huge mistake directors make is when they focus solely on the cost of liquidation rather than what's the total cost. And here's why that mistake really matters. I think it's the mindset of a director in this position that's quite dangerous. I mean, obviously your business has become insolvent, liquidation isn't cheap, okay? But it's not just a service that you're buying, and it's not a service that's the same everywhere you go. It's a legal process, and the insolvency practitioner that you appoint are duty bound to act on behalf of the creditors of the company. It's their job to bring in as much money into the insolvency as possible. And that can lead to personal liability and claims against you as a director. Now, I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong, they're just doing their job. What I'm saying is, you should be told this on day one, or certainly be given this information before you decide to work with a certain insolvency firm. Now, because directors are under financial stress, I completely understand why they're price conscious. because, you know, I don't know, when I'm going out there to get a service that doesn't really matter, maybe I'm looking for some paving stones. And if they all look the same, I want the cheapest paving stones. If I'm going out there to, I don't know, help me out here, wash my car, and they all look like they're the same car washes, I want the cheapest one. Because the consequences of getting it wrong aren't that high, are they? Now, the reality with insolvency is it's very different. Because a cheap liquidation quote, for me, it means there's things that you're not being told. There's things that you're quite likely going to end up getting charged that they're not mentioning. No one does a liquidation at £2,000. I don't think many people are doing them for £4,000 nowadays. Like the basic charge to get into liquidation is £5,000 plus VAT. Can be higher, but it's not everything. I mean, it's very rare that £5,000 plus VAT's all you're going to pay. Because insolvency involves an insolvency practitioner. It involves a lot of work. It involves a lot of investigation work. And it's that investigation work that's going to create more fees for you to pay. Now, if you're paying a cheap liquidating cost, there's a sting in the tail, 100%. And the person who's doing the job, if you're going, what's the cost to liquidate? Very quickly, if you call me, I know within 10 minutes of talking to you and having a look at some basic information that's on Company's House, I've got a bloody good idea what your problem is, okay? Where I'm different is I'll tell you that as soon as possible. A lot of firms will see someone who's desperate to get into liquidation and they'll go, yeah, I'll take your money, please. What does it cost to liquidate? Okay, it's 2, 3, 4, £5,000 plus VAT. And they're telling you the truth. To get your business into liquidation costs that, but that's not the full story. Now, if you choose liquidation based solely on price of getting it into liquidation, this is where it can cause you huge problems, okay? Directors will frequently face additional fees from things like you've took too much of a bounce back loan. So they're going to ask you to pay that back. Or you've made a preference payment to your Auntie Mildred 3 weeks before contacting the liquidator. They're going to ask you to pay that back. Or you've got an overdrawn loan account where you owe the company money. They're going to ask you to pay that back. So saving a little bit of money initially ends up costing these directors tens of thousands of pounds. Listen, some people lose their houses. That's the top and bottom of it. Focusing purely on the cost to liquidate instead of the cost of the whole job is one of the most expensive mistakes that you can make. I have got far too many. I could literally talk to you for 24 hours with a lot of caffeine about the problems I've seen where directors do this. And I've lost jobs. I've lost loads of jobs over the years. And what will normally happen is, I mean, I've had it this week. I've had a guy who I spoke to 12 months ago, and when he come to me, straight away I knew he had some big problems, and it was an overdrawn loan account that was the big problem. He owed the company money, okay? I could see it on the balance sheet. I knew that that overdrawn loan account had gone up since his last set of accounts because he was still taking money out of the business in his head as a dividend when it was clearly insolvent. And when you've got an overdrawn loan account, the first thing I'm going to ask you, I'm going to go, listen, it's an awkward conversation, this. But what have you got to protect personally? You know, have you got property? If you've got a property, what's your equity in that property? Are you married? Do you have personal debt? Do you have buy-to-lets? Do you have savings? And not only had this guy got an overdrawn loan account, but it had gone up considerably since his last set of accounts. He was wealthy on paper. He was skint in the bank, but on paper he had a lot of assets and he had a lot of equity in those assets. And when I worked this out, like it was going to cost him over 100 grand. And that was a good deal, because when you've got an overdrawn loan account, you can still get discounts and deals done most of the time. And someone else who his accountant had recommended and basically charged him 10 grand to liquidate. And that was all that was going to be required. So it wasn't even a cheap liquidation, but it was a cheaper liquidation than what I was saying. Because I'm saying, listen, it's going to cost you 100 grand this. Anyway, you know, as night turns into day, a few months later, he got back in touch with me. And he says, I'm being pursued for the full amount. And he owed the company 200 grand. And he was having to remortgage his house. And he was paying almost most of it back. And I sort of feel like, you know what? You can lead an horse to water. And if we give you this advice and you decide not to take it and you go out elsewhere and it costs you a lot more money, that's your fault. And again, this guy's problem is he's focusing on the cost to liquidate, not on what the cost of it's going to be in total. Okay? Now, another mistake that directors are making when they're asking what's the cheapest cost to liquidate is that overlooking the hidden risks and potential extra costs lurking behind a cheap price. Okay, so like I said, let's go back to the example of someone saying that they can get you into liquidation for 2 grand. You need to be asking yourself, okay, well, if this is 2 grand and everyone else is 5 grand, what risks am I not being told about? What are the promises for a 2 grand liquidation? What fees are going to appear later on? Now, the only promise you can get with somebody who's going to say they're going to get into liquidation for 2 grand is you're going to be in liquidation for 2 grand. But that's going to be where your problems start. And these cheap liquidation costs, they often sort of hide crucial problems that are going to cause you a problem later on. Because remember, every insolvency involves an insolvency practitioner investigating the conduct of the director. And as a result of those investigations, you could be asked to pay more fees. And those investigations are going to be like, right, again, overdrawn loan accounts. Have you got an overdrawn loan account? If you've got one, it needs to be discussed up front with that insolvency practitioner before you make a decision. Now, the insolvency practitioner can't formally agree anything on a director's loan account until they've been appointed, because they don't have the authority to do so. But they can give you a really good idea in principle. And if you work with somebody like us, like we'll oversee all that negotiation, okay? There could be extra fees if there's assets in the business. So you want to buy the business's assets and take them into a new company or you personally. Well, you're going to have to pay a fair market value for those. And again, if I was you as a director, I want to be getting that valuation done before I appoint that liquidator. So I understand what I'm going to be able to buy those assets back for, and then I'll go to the liquidator and go, right, well, what terms can you give me? Another issue is intercompany loans. They're a bit like director's loans. So let's say you're a limited company director and you have lent another company of yours 50 grand. Well, on liquidation, that 50 grand becomes repayable to the insolvency practitioner who will collect it in for the, benefit of creditors. Now, let's say that intercompany you have has property in, and that property has a lot of equity. Well, the insolvency practitioner can't really do a deal on that intercompany loan. They're not going to be able to justify that to creditors. So therefore, the property company is going to have to pay all the money back. And if it doesn't, the insolvency practitioner will just wind up the property company. Huge risks that aren't getting discussed early enough. Sometimes insolvencies aren't straightforward. Like if you've done something wrong and you're not telling anyone, it is going to be uncovered once you appoint a liquidator. That's the job, is to find problems. So my advice is get the problems out up front. Low cost liquidations, my opinion is they don't really want to talk about problems at that stage. They want to talk about the problems once they've been appointed. And I say it all the time, insolvency is like dancing with a gorilla. Once you've appointed a liquidator, that dance isn't over until the liquidator says it is. So for you guys out there, you've got to put the effort in early doors to understand what your problems are, what it's going to cost you. When you're looking at like what's the cheapest liquidator, what looks cheap can become disastrously expensive once they get appointed. So again, please, please, please don't be basing this information on what is it going to cost me to get it into liquidation. You need to understand what all the costs are, okay? Now, there are some lessons that I want to pass on to you here, right? Lesson one, the cheapest liquidation is almost never the safest option for you, okay? When it's low cost, headline figure like that, there is something coming to bite you on the arse once that insolvency practitioner has been appointed, okay? If you choose based purely on the cost to liquidate, you're going to feel some pain later on, right? Lesson two, liquidation, insolvency, administration is not about the initial cost. The real information you need is what is it going to cost in total, okay? Director's loan accounts, if you've got one, how much is it going to cost you to settle it? What are you buying the assets back for? Over what time scales, okay? Another lesson, right? You've always got to consider things you've done wrong. People think that nothing's going to come out. They're just not going to tell the insolvency practitioner this. Oh, I'm going to hide that. They won't ask about it. Let me tell you, an insolvency practitioner is a bloodhound for a problem. That is what they're paid to do. They're paid to uncover problems. You've got to be open and transparent from the start, okay? Now, I'm hoping that you can clearly see now why going with the cheapest cost to liquidate is dangerous, okay? Here is what you should focus on instead. Your priority one is to understand what this is going to cause you problem-wise personally if you do it, okay? What personal claims are going to be aimed at you as a director once you go into liquidation? Priority two is choosing an insolvency professional who's going to give you all this time up front without asking for any commitment. That's what we do here. Like, we will help you review absolutely everything. We'll get all your problems on the table. We will work with the insolvency practitioners to help you understand exactly what this is going to cost you, and we're not going to charge you a penny until we've got everything out and you can make an informed decision, okay? Priority three, work with somebody who's experienced, okay, and has a really good reputation. And what you do there is you go out there and you check these companies out. You look at them on Trustpilot, you look at them on Google reviews, you ask for referrals, okay? And priority four is you want some clear, transparent proposal of what the risks are and what the costs are. And even though an insolvency practitioner can't formally agree to any type of deals, they can give you a bloody good idea about what they'll accept in principle, okay? Now, if you focus on these factors, it's going to save you money, I promise you, okay? It is the safest and the smartest approach to insolvency, okay? Now, when you're going through an insolvency, okay, it's always better for you to do it voluntary as opposed to being wound up compulsory, okay? Creditors voluntary liquidation, liquidation for short, is where you go out there and you appoint a liquidator of your choosing, okay? And in that scenario, you've got an element of control because you're going out there to find a company to do it. And hopefully, because you've watched really good videos of Chris Worden at Director First, you'll ask for a full proposal. Even better, you'll pick the phone up to one of Chris Worden's team at Director First and we'll hold your hand throughout the process. What you can't do, okay, if you get compulsory wound up, the official receiver, compulsory wound up is the cheapest up front because it's not going to cost you a penny. But that official receiver will get appointed. It's a government body and if there's anything that's wrong, you're going to be held to account, and that process is almost always got worse consequences. Okay, so I hope that you have found this video helpful. Before we end the video, I'm going to go through the action plan that I want you to do. First of all, this week I want you to take some immediate action steps, right? Stop focusing on the lowest cost of liquidation. Understand that insolvency can come with additional costs. Before you approach an insolvency professional, I want you to get all your debts down, line by line. Who do you owe? How much do you owe? Okay? Stop taking big sums of money out of the business account. Okay? If you need to take money from the business, make sure it's going through the salary scheme, right? Next week, I want you to get organised. So get all your statements from your people that you owe money. Try and get some up-to-date management accounts, you know, a recent balance sheet or a recent profit and loss. And I want you to start researching reputable insolvency firms. Guess what? We're here. We can help you. We offer free and independent advice. But go out there, speak to more than one, okay? Once you've done that, I want you to start speaking to these firms, okay? All your consultations should be in confidence, and hopefully that insolvency practitioner or professional will walk you through the various options that you've got. It could be liquidation, it could be a CVA, it could be an administration. In a lot of cases, you might not need insolvency, you just need some good advisory. But I want you to ask clear, direct questions about personal risk, okay? And once you've got all that information and an insolvency is the right option for you, you need to appoint somebody reputable, okay? You've got to choose the right firm for you. And if you follow these steps, it's going to protect you as best you can. Obviously, problems can't get swept away. Anyone who tells you that is not telling you the truth. But you've got to be armed with all the facts about what's going on before you make a decision. Now, you've got a couple of options now. You can keep asking what's the cheapest cost to liquidate and go with that firm, and that's going to cause you some problems down the line. Or option two is you take some immediate action and you prioritise understanding what the whole costs are, which hopefully will protect your personal finances before you make a decision. If you want some help, pick the phone up. It's Chris Worden. We offer free independent advice. Hit subscribe now for clear, practical insolvency advice designed specifically for UK directors. Leave questions below and I'll personally reply. But most importantly, if you're stressed or uncertain, reach out to us today. Thanks for your time. God bless.